Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Legends and Legacies. I'm your host, Jim Danaker, and today we've got a really special episode for you. I'm going to interview my great friend and former employer of almost 3 decades. This guy and I traveled the world together on planes, trains, automobiles, even Learjets, playing stages everywhere from theaters to stadiums. I'm telling you, working for this guy was like winning the lottery for me as a 22-year-old kid when I moved to Nashville with big dreams. He showed me what it was like to do things with integrity, with kindness, with excellence. Working for this guy was an education in so many ways, so I can't wait for you to hear this interview. Enough blabbing from me. Let's jump over to his studio in Franklin, Tennessee, and we're going to talk about all kinds of things that you're going to want to hear. Ladies and gentlemen, my great friend, Michael W. Smith, or as we call him, Smitty. All right. As part of our exploration of what made the 80s so unique, today's a special one. We're here with an artist who made an absolute cannonball in the pool of 80s synth pop, and someone I'm honored to call a great friend, Michael W. Smith, known to many as Smitty. My brother, your career spans more than 40 years. You helped to define the CCM genre in the early 80s. You crossed over to mainstream pop in the 90s. Over 18 million records sold, 5 of which went platinum, 14 gold, 36 number 1 songs, 3 Grammys, 45 Dove Awards. If I keep saying this stuff, the interviews, we're going to run out of camera card space. American Music Award, and at the just getting started age of 67, you're still touring the world and innovating in the studio. So we got a lot to talk about. First things first, thank you for taking the time.
You're welcome.
This means a lot.
Good to be with Jimbo.
Yeah, man.
As I affectionately call him.
Yes. So, all right. So, Smitty, you grew up in the 60s and 70s when music was still really organic. Obviously, there were no synthesizers yet. And so even through the early 80s, it was kind of that way. But from the first note of your debut record in 83, you blazed a trail with synthesizers all over your songs. Your name was really synonymous with synth pop, especially in the Christian music scene. So what drew you in that direction from the get-go? What inspired you to really champion the cutting edge of technology in your music?
Well, I didn't know I was doing that. I mean, I was... I'll never forget getting that first synthesizer and getting that Prophet 5, and then somebody told me about this instrument called the GS2 by Yamaha that a family had owned from Belmont Church, and we were having a youth night over there, and they let me play it, and I thought, oh my goodness, what is this thing? And they let me borrow it, and I ended up really predominantly using that on the second album, Michael W. Smith 2. Mm-hmm. But a lot of Prophet 5 on that first project record. So to me, I was just, it was Moog.
Yeah.
It was the era of synthesizers, and I just thought they were the coolest thing since sliced bread. It's like, this is amazing. And so, and then creatively, it was all inspired by what? Andre Crouch, Beatles, Kansas. I've drawn a blank. All the stuff in the 60s and 70s I grew up on. Elton John, the early Elton John records. And so it was always my dream when I really did feel like God had a call in my life to do the music thing, going, gosh, wouldn't it be great to make pop music and talk about your faith? Mm. And so that was sort of my goal. And nobody gave me a record deal. And then finally my manager borrowed some money from the bank. And I had a free studio at Tree Publishing Company, and Mike Snosa's engineering, and we made that record for $11,000.
Oh my gosh!
So, and Jack Joseph Puig mixed that record.
Oh my gosh! Yeah. Okay.
Oh, and I was a little hyper back then, so Jack was very patient with me, but I was so excited. I thought, man, this is the dream of this little kid from West Virginia.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting on the couch, and I'll end here, with Debbie at 3 o'clock in the morning. This is our last night, going, if I never ever get to do another record, thank you God I got to do one.
Yeah.
And so, but obviously that didn't happen.
Yeah. How many is it now? How many?
I've lost count.
Yeah,
it's either with best ofs and Christmas records and instrumental. I think it's like 36 or 37, something like that.
Yeah, it's time to just stop counting. Oh my gosh. Okay, so as much as you've always used technology in your music, that's always been, I would say it's always been secondary to you, because you've always talked about the importance of melody,
Yeah.
innovative chord changes. I would call your music thoughtful and intentional. Can you, I mean, it all comes down to the song itself.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a bit, especially for younger listeners, guys who are, guys and girls who are trying to figure those priorities out when it comes to making music, that technology is awesome, but the song, talk about that.
Yeah, to me, I've always said that. I mean, I've spoke to a bunch of kids the other night from Colorado, a bunch of music students getting ready to graduate from high school, and they might be coming to Belmont or David Lipscomb or going someplace they want to get into music. And I'm going, you know what? You don't have to have the greatest voice in the world. And I'm an example of that. I'm not the greatest singer. I get beside Andre Bocelli. We've worked together several times, and I don't hold a stick to that guy. It's like, that guy's amazing. But I don't think anybody else sounds like me either. But you don't walk away going, oh my gosh, that guy's got a great voice. I think they walk away going, wait a minute, well, I sure like that song. And so I told the students, which I've told students over the last 4 decades, it's always about the song. And if they can hum that melody and hum it 10 years later and hum it 20 years later, then you might possibly have a career.
Yeah, so good. So your first 2 records were, I would say they were synth heavy because there's a lot of synths and stuff on them, but they were still relatively organic overall. Like there, wasn't a lot of sequencing and drum machines, all that kind of thing. Then along comes The Big Picture in 1986, and it dropped like a bomb. It was a radical departure. It was full of, if there were stereotypical 80s elements, sequencers, drum machines, vocoders, sampling, that stuff was all there in spades. In fact, I remember, I'm 15 years behind you, so growing up a kid in the 80s, and kind of, I would say, a little sheltered almost. My dad was a pastor, grew up in the church, so you were the trailblazer for a lot of us. And I remember bringing that cassette home.
It was a record too. But
yes, it was.
Cassette.
And I remember after the second song, I had to pause and catch my breath. I'm like, what in the world are we listening to? So, number one, was that, of course it was intentional. I was going to ask you if that was intentional, but talk about what led to that. It was like a whiplash. You went from Michael W. Smith 2, which was really organic overall, to pop production on Stun.
Right.
Talk about that a little bit.
Well, I think if I can remember correctly and what led up to that, and I think about the first and second record. They're not really very great production wise. I'm producing record for the very first time in my life. I've never produced anything in my life, and I'm producing these records, which is insane, kind of. But I think kind of what maybe spearheaded or was a little bit of a wind at my back to do The Big Picture was what we did on the Friends live tour. And you had, it was the magic 5 or 6 of us. David Huff and Wayne Kirkpatrick and Mark Heimerman, Chris Harris on bass, David Huff on drums, and then I would do all these crazy stuff like channels, these little things. We'd finish a song, all of a sudden, You Need a Savior's going into some crazy, wacky musical journey, and I did that a lot during that tour. Yeah, and I had so much fun. And I think probably when I finished, we decided that we're going to do the third, which would be really. Well, be the 4th record if you count Friends Live as the 3rd. I just wanted to I wanted to try something different. Let's go work with somebody I've never worked with before. And then I heard about this guy named John Patoker, who was famous back then for doing the remixes for Scritti Politti. And so I met him. He's in New York, and before you know it, I hired him. I talked my managers into it. We were going to try to keep the budget as tight as we could. That didn't happen. It was probably the most expensive record I've ever made.
Really?
Yeah. and like upwards like $250,000, which back then.
I was going to say, good news is multiply that times 4.5.
Yeah, but back then that was a lot for me.
Sure,
you know, and so so John was a perfectionist. He just kept mixing and mixing. And we spent hours and days up in Carlisle, Massachusetts, at this studio. But we were at the power station, and we had all these great players, and there's some things I don't like about the record. I don't think there's a lot of bottom end. I wish we had done that, but there was something really unique and adventurous, and writing songs like Wired for Sound and Law Moves, like where did that come from? You know, like everybody's going, what's Law Move? Which is inspired by a trip that Amy Grant took to Africa, you know. But I was writing all this crazy stuff and going, why not? Yeah. Why not? Let's just go for it. And I did. And so it was a shot for people, because even though the first two records were somewhat progressive and had some synths and all that sort of thing, and I think there were some great melodies and stuff, but big pictures, like, whoa, like, what happened to W here?
It was truly breathtaking. I mean, from a fan perspective, it was. It's all, you know, we've talked about this in the past. You know how U2 records kind of have to grow on you a little bit? I mean, I know, at least for me, I know I've talked to several other people that you end up falling in love with them. Yeah. I think Big Picture was kind of like that, at least for some people that I've talked to, where it was, now it's one of their absolute favorites, but it was such a shock that it was like, it just took a minute to really sink in what was happening. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the best things about that record. So what were you listening to in those days that inspired some of that stuff? Do you remember?
Wow, what was I listening to?
This would have been 85, 84, 85.
Yeah, what were those records? I'm trying to think when...
You've got one of them sitting there, I think.
Yeah, Tears for Fears. Yeah. Yeah.
Songs from the Big Chair.
Songs from the Big Chair. I saw them in concert at the Opry House. And... Amy was there with, I think we had the whole band. Yeah. And I was like, this is unbelievable.
They played at the Opry House?
They played the Opry House.
Wow.
And if I'm not mistaken, it was sold out. And that's when Shout was out. Yeah. You know, it's always that record. And then Everybody Wants to Rule the World. I think another thing, although it doesn't sound like the Toto thing, but I have a really crazy Toto story. It's like when I remember I had this little red Datsun, and this is Debbie and I just gotten married, so we might have been married 6 months. We're living in this duplex. So this would have been maybe the spring of maybe February, March of 1982. Mm. Oh. And I'm coming home, and all of a sudden I'm about a minute and a half from the house, and this song comes on the radio, and it's Rosanna. Yep. And I am flipping out. And like I pulled in the garage. I had it cranked up. And I listened to the whole thing, and then I screamed. Yeah. I mean, I screamed like, wow. Yeah. Like I'd never heard anything like it. When Debbie runs down the stairs, thinks I'm having a heart attack or something. What's going on with my husband? She said, are you okay? Are you okay? I go, oh my gosh, you're not going to believe what I just heard. Yeah. I heard a song called Rosanna about this band called Toto. Yeah. And that was a game changer for me. That whole record was for me. And so I was listening to that. I was listening to Tears for Fears. I was always going back to the old Elton John records. Mm. Still was a huge fan of Kansas, you know. But yeah, it could have been I was listening to a lot of stuff. Yeah. Just trying to, and a lot of, even back then, a lot of European stuff, you know, that was kind of coming out of Europe in the 80s. But I don't know how all that sort of went into some pile, and I started writing, you know, things like Wired for Sound and the crazy end thing, how I ended the whole record with the whole crazy piano thing. Yeah. It kind of came out of nowhere. Right. You're All Right. It was Rodriguez playing guitar. Right. Yeah. And voices, you know, that was kind of like, that was a bit of a like, ooh. Yeah. You know, but it was intentional, but at the same time, man, it was experimental. Mm-hmm. And so we had the emulator then. Mm-hmm. and we were putting them in the floppies.
Right.
You know, and
Right.
go, bam, bam, all them, bam, all
Right.
these big orchestra hits.
Yeah.
And I would just do this all day, and John going, it might be a little too much, but what do you think with it? Bam, bam. And it was just, but we had so much fun.
Yeah.
Just so much fun. And then the whole Power Station thing, Tony Levin on bass.
You just get into my next question.
Yeah.
So yeah, you got John Patoker, Shane Keister, Tony Levin, Steve Ferroni, Bashiri Johnson.
Yeah.
Any highlights from working with those guys?
It was just
all of
I
it?
just couldn't believe it. I was thinking, these guys have no idea who I am, and I'm kind of okay with that, you know. But they were all in.
Yeah.
And Ferroni was just killing it. They all were just, you know, you're sitting there kind of like, am I really in New York City at the Power Station, making a record with some of the greatest musicians in the world?
Yeah.
And
It's a gift.
And it was, and John was a huge part of that, and they had a lot of respect for John, and so yeah. And then, like I said, we ended up back here working on the record a lot, and then back then I think we had 2 Studer 24-track analog machines that were talking to each other, so it's 48 tracks.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
There was a lot of let's just throw this in here and mix it.
It was a dense record.
Yeah, and just creating more tracks. And then I just remember just being in Carlisle, Massachusetts, at this studio that was sort of underground, like a house that was underground, and just Patoker just going for hours. Like, is it really taking this long? And I would just go up, stay at a hotel, and we'd just work all day.
Yeah.
But it was fun. It was exhausting a little bit, you know. But I kept going, how much money are we spending?
Yeah,
here?
right.
So,
right.
But it's okay. It was a great experiment, and I loved every minute of it.
Yeah. Well, it was worth it. So in 1987, you took the big picture on tour and released both a live concert video and an album called The Live Set.
Yep.
I wish I had $1 for everyone who's told me over the years how that tour video and record were a masterclass in producing a live show.
Wow.
Many of us, me included, wore out those tapes, and I'd go so far as to call them, they were a huge part of my musical education. And I know that for a lot of people, a lot of friends. Tell us about your priorities when it came to crafting a show like that. And I would, before you answer, I would say, furthermore, you, not just that show, you carried that through the Go West show and Change Your World. I mean, not just the production, but your intentionality about, like you were saying a little bit ago, segues and these crazy things that you did. What was your philosophy behind that? What drove all that?
I just wanted to have fun. I just wanted to create something that would stimulate me. You know, like, I mean, how boring would it be to play something of your own and it really doesn't ignite any excitement?
Right.
So, to me, it's all about sort of the arrangements. Let's figure out how we can still stay true to the song, but let's go venture to another continent for 16 bars. Yeah. You know, and so I love doing that. And here's another crazy story. I mean, and I could go on all musically and doing all those rehearsals and let's try this, and I would always include everybody in the band. But I would spur the idea. What do you think? Hey, Hyman, what do you think you should do here? Well, if you did this, it's a great idea. Oh, it's not a good idea. And everybody was like, it was kind of a group effort. Yeah. I obviously drove it, but I remember when I was putting together the big picture tour, we were about to start rehearsals, and Genesis came to town.
Oh gosh!
And I went and saw them at Municipal Auditorium, and it's the very first time I saw Very Lights. Yeah. And they were going, flying everywhere, and I'm sitting there going, oh my gosh. And I remember walking out going, we got to get Very Lights for the big picture tour. We got to get Very Lights for it. And I think I'm the first one. I'm almost positive I am. I'm not bragging about that. I'm just going, I don't care what it costs. Yeah. And we got 8 Very Lights. Yeah. You know, and
I remember seeing
and everybody's
that.
like, whoa, what is that? And they're just, you know, so
it went from like a light bulb in a par can to look like lasers. Exactly. Very space age. Yeah.
So that kind of made it fun.
Yeah.
You know, Yeah, and I actually really still love going back and watching that show. I think I played, if I'm not mistaken, that tour. Did I play a little pan flute? Which was
for Rocketown.
Yes, which was another big record that I love, was Synchronicity by Police.
Yeah.
So there's one moment where Sting plays this little what do we call it? It's like a
pan flute.
Yeah, it's a pan flute.
Yeah.
And I thought, I've got to figure out. I have to figure out how to do. Can I use that on Rocketown?
Yeah.
And so I had Hireman going, Hireman, get the what's the little
kalimba.
The kalimba.
Yep. Right.
And then all the little perk and stuff. And
Yep. The brilliant thing about that, and all those, you did that all the time. All these segues between songs. Nobody knew what song was coming.
That's true.
It was this mesmerizing. I don't know what this is. It's amazing. And then all of a sudden, the key figure would come in for whatever song, and then it's like you'd heard 6,000 collective gasps, because then you gave it away. You know, but it was always that push-pull of anticipation, and what is this? It's amazing. And then it's like you're popping the cork on a bottle of wine, and there it is.
Right,
you know,
right.
It was magical, and it was educational too. So the pendulum swung back pretty hard from the super slick pop of Big Picture to a much more organic approach with Eye to Eye in 1988. Was that a conscious decision, or what took you in that direction?
I think I was so inspired by being at the Bennett House, doing Lead Me On with Amy, and how organic that record was. And gosh, and I'll never forget actually playing Lead Me On. I'll never forget for the rest of my life. I remember everything that happened. We played it. We couldn't stop.
Yeah.
I think we played it for 12 minutes long. We just kept playing the chorus.
Yeah.
You had Paul Lyne playing drums, and Dan Huff and Mike Brignadello on bass. And it was just epic.
Yeah.
You know. So I walked away from that experience going, I want to be at the Bennett House. And so I want to utilize the Bennett House because you've got these big rooms.
Yeah.
The console obviously in the back, but you got ambient mic set up in all these rooms.
Yeah.
Kind of like this house, which I'm excited about.
It's an old historic house.
A little Bennett House too that I'm in now. But those rooms were huge. So their drums were huge. They're massive.
Yeah.
So if you go back and listen to the drum kit on Eye to Eye, and Lead Me On too, but Eye to Eye, you listen to like Live and Learn or whatever. I mean, the drums are just so massive.
Yeah.
And
I'd never heard anything like that.
I love it. And so, so I think, I mean, the songs probably could have been maybe geared a little bit more slick and maybe a little bit more pop. I just consciously, I think, when I pulled Wayne in, I had Billy Whittington on engineer, and we just got our house in Linwood Downs in '88, and I put through my studio for the first time in my basement there. And then I got in the middle. I actually cut those tracks without Wayne, and then I realized, going, oh my gosh, I'm not sure I can do this by myself. I'm going to need some help. And then I said, Wayne, won't you come and? It might have been one of the first things that Wayne had produced, actually. So Wayne co-produced with me, and I said, help me pull this thing together. Once we got the tracks, and obviously Wayne was just brilliant, especially when it came to vocals and BGVs. And obviously he's writing a lot of these songs with me. So, but I think the Bennett House and the tapestry that we had in terms of what we were creating sonically just lent itself to be just more organic. So
Any recollection of what you were listening to that led up to that? Especially when I think of a song like Secret Ambition, it's so unique and different. I mean, a lot of the stuff on that record's like that. And
what was I listening to, man?
I mean, I know you tend to be all over the map, but it's like it was it was a big change of direction. And so I've always been curious about it. Was there anything that...
I think I was, I was probably listening to a lot of Genesis. I was listening to a lot of European music, Can
you think of like when you say European, can you think of an example?
Well, I'm trying to think when I first heard of Kershaw, Nick, and I think I'd heard Wouldn't It Be Good? That really the only hit song he had in America was Pretty in Pink. Is that it?
I think so. Yeah.
And I just thought, oh my gosh, it was his melodies, and so that's kind of when I discovered Nick. And then And then all these other crazy European artists with all the crazy hair and writing all kind of this infectious pop kind of stuff, you know.
Yeah.
And so I was probably living in that world a little bit. And then what came after Eye to Eye was, I guess, the Christmas record was after Eye to Eye.
Yeah.
Yeah, before we headed into obviously the 90s.
Yeah.
Go West Young Man.
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
Yeah.
So by the late 80s, you were firmly established as kind of a torchbearer, for lack of a better word, of Christian pop. But by the Go West Young Man record in 90, you suddenly found yourself in the mainstream, songs on pop radio. So there's obvious positives that come with that, but were there any negatives that surprised you about all of a sudden that change of scenery?
Well, I think the main negative was I found the church being very judgmental of me, you know. And I thought, oh, he's gone pop. He's
selling out.
working for the devil now.
Yeah.
It's like, really? I mean, and I would never debate with those people because I felt like there was nothing to debate.
Yeah.
I didn't try to write a pop song. I've
Yeah.
never tried. The only thing I've intentionally tried to do was if I'm making a Christmas record, then I've sort of got to stay in the Christmas continent, you know,
Yeah.
here, you know. Or if I'm writing an instrumental record, you know, there's instrumental. I mean, it's obviously going to be cinematic. But when it came to all the pop stuff, I never tried to do that. I never tried to like, oh, I'm going to try to write a song for pop radio, or I'm going to try to write a song for Christian radio.
Yeah.
So it's just whatever fell out of the sky,
Yeah.
you know. And then I would never forget when I wrote Place in This World, and when I wrote the music, and I just thought, oh my gosh, I think there's something, even before I had the lyric, even before Wayne and Amy came in and wrote the lyric, I think there's something here. Obviously, they came up with this great idea, probably inspired by letters I got in the mail from especially young girls who were suicidal and abused and da-da-da. And I think actually one letter, if I'm not mistaken, was she just said, she was desperate. Obviously, and that's back when I had my assistant reading all these letters. But one letter just said, I'm just trying to find my place in this world. And I went, whoop. I think that's our title.
Yeah.
So, and then Humberto Gatica, you know, came in. Me and Brian Lennox mixed that record. Gosh, I miss Brian. And he had the greatest ears.
Yeah.
He would drive me crazy because we spent all day on the snare drum sound. Going, Brian, I'm going to kill you.
Patience is not a Michael W. virtue.
No, it's not. It's just like we're spending all day on the snare drum. That's what we did.
Right. And I tell you, that was a snare drum worth working for.
Well, it was, and you know, and Humberto, he triggered a lot of that stuff. He brought in all his stuff too, which made it really big and epic. And it had the whole Chicago thing because all Humberto's work with David Foster and all this work they did together. But Humberto was a blast to work with. He brought a lot of energy, especially into the mix, and with Change the World as well.
Yeah.
He did both those records. So, but that was. Yeah, Place This World, and For You was on that record, and Go West Young Man, and that was kind of that was probably at that point the most pop thing that I'd ever done. You know, again, not intentional. These songs were just falling out of the sky and going, oh, I kind of like that.
Yeah.
So,
looking back, is there anything you wish you could do differently, or anything you wish had played out differently in those days, like in Go West when things started going kind of mainstream? Not regrets, but I mean, any.
No, I think probably I would just personally, on a personal level, a spiritual level, I would probably, if I had the opportunity to go back and talk to myself in 1990, I would probably say it's not about you. And so when you have that kind of success come your way, I don't care where you're at, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, it can kind of take you for a ride.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of temptations. You know, I took a lot of people on the road with me because I had, you know, a lot of women kind of throwing themselves at me. It's like crazy. I mean, crazy stuff. So I really had to be careful and thank God I didn't fall off the cliff. But there was something that I loved. Matter of fact, I absolutely loved it, probably more than I even think that I did. I loved being a light in a really dark place. And I was in some dark places. And I had a lot of people ask me a lot of questions. You know, you're different. What is something different about you, you know? And those are great opportunities to be able to not beating everybody on the head with my spiritual beliefs, but just to be able to go, this is what I believe. And and I didn't threaten them, and I wasn't judgmental. So that was fun. But I would say, to answer your question, I would just say it's not about you.
Yeah. You touched on something that is really important to me, with doing this Arcade Orchestra thing. Sure, it's about, I want to bring people joy, especially people that live through that time that we all love and remember. But at the core, one of the things I take away from 27 years watching you is your stories of being in that pop heyday, that crazy world. You've told stories about being in a makeup chair, getting ready to do, I think it was VH1 or MTV.
Yeah.
And the girl doing your makeup just said, "There's something different about you." Will you tell that story really quick?
Yeah, it was, and she was beautiful. She was a little too pretty for me, but she was sweet, and she just doing her job, but she there's something different about you. What's about you? You just have this peace, and I said, "You want to know what it is?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "It's Jesus. He's changed my life." And she had these big, huge tears. I'll never forget it, just rolling down her cheek. And she said, "Thank you." I said, "I'll pray for you. I'm not going to forget this moment with you.
Yeah.
And thank you for asking." And it was just, I remember getting out of the makeup chair and going, "This is why I'm at VH1.
Yeah.
I'm here to co-host with." Oh gosh,
it was Luther Vandross.
Luther Vandross.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But no, I'm here for something greater than just hosting VH1.
And that to me, that's it. That to me is the core of why, personally, why I want an opportunity to remind people of really good memories, all that kind of thing. And it's iconic, timeless music. But at the core of it, I have this crazy dream of continuing what you started. Everywhere we go, whatever city we end up in, I want to look for those people who are, and you can always tell. I mean, I've seen it a million times. The janitor or whoever it might be, I want to zero in on those people and figure out, how do we love them where we are, or where they are? How do we leave a place better than we found it?
Right.
And I learned that from you.
Wow.
So, whether it was your 80s pop heyday, your instrumental albums, or even your approach to, all the worship projects we've done, there's always been a cinematic flair to your music. You paint in very epic musical strokes. Who or what do you credit for that?
John Williams.
That was easy.
Surprise.
Yeah.
you feel the same way.
I know, but for the sake of everybody.
No, it's like, oh my gosh, when I saw Raiders of the Lost Ark 28 times at the theater, I've told that story, it well, and just I kept going back because it was the music, and I thought I'd never heard anything like it. And how he would you'd hear the theme, but you would hear these themes reoccurring throughout the movie, and he does that a lot. It might be in a minor key, it might just be a little hint of just, oh gosh, there's a little bit of the theme. And I just thought, I felt like that sort of helped hold the movie together. So I learned that from him. I've learned a lot of tricks from him.
Yeah.
Modulating down a step and a half.
Yeah.
Which is epic.
Yeah.
And but yeah, it's his melodies.
Yeah.
They're just Schindler's List. Oh.
Yeah.
It's like, I could go on and on. And then, another movie that was really impactful on me musically was Ennio Morricone, was The Mission. So
Gabriel Zobo.
Gabriel Zobo.
Yeah,
that might be maybe my favorite soundtrack, just because I think to be able to write a score with a really, really difficult, this whole thing, the whole story, won't go into it, but what that movie's all about.
Yeah.
And gosh, there's just moments like, wow, it's just incredible. So I watched that movie a lot because of the music as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, John Williams, and be able to see him in concert, and just, gosh, it just yeah. And I still want to do that stuff. My son Tyler's scoring movies, he's so good. I think you have to go live in that world, and I'm not called to go live in that world.
Yeah.
I hope I get to do another one day. You
Yeah.
know? But it's hard. I mean, it's like, especially when I scored Joshua, the very first movie I scored, and I got the job. I couldn't believe this guy hired me. I just could not even believe it. Like, I'd never scored a movie, but he found out that I'd wanted to score a movie. You know, and I remember 3 days into it going, "Oh my gosh, they've hired the wrong guy." And I've heard
Hans Zimmer says the same
he said
thing.
the same thing. Hans has said the same thing. They've hired the wrong guy, and then you find something. You know, oh my gosh, I think I can build on that.
Yeah.
You know, and I found that theme, that Joshua theme.
Yeah.
But it's fun. But it's you're working for somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah. Most of the time, I get to work for me.
Yeah.
You
Right.
know, and I kind of get to do whatever. This director's got to be happy.
Yeah.
He's trying to tell me what he wants. He's
Right.
sending me temp music, and this is sort of what I'm looking for, and I've got to find that for him.
Yeah.
Which there's a little bit of pressure, you know.
Yeah. And you feel like, you know, you come up with something you really, really like and you get attached to it, and the director's like, it's not the right thing for this. That's hard.
It's hard.
It's really hard.
Yeah.
Hey guys, hope you're enjoying another episode of Legends and Legacies. There is so much more cool stuff to come. We are talking with some seriously legendary household names, but to bring those in, to lock them in, we really need your help. Would you consider hitting like, hitting subscribe, leaving us a comment, good or bad, leaving us a review, and sharing with your friends? That will help us drive the numbers up. It'll help us get this thing out there, and it'll help us lock in some guests that we're really trying to get. And trust me, you are gonna want to hear from these people. We're close, but we could really use the extra push. So thanks for being here. We really, really are so glad to share these stories, these living legends who wrote the soundtrack of a generation. Thank you again, and we'll talk to you soon. Now back to Legends and Legacies. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about music and the power of nostalgia. The biggest touring acts of the last few years, since 2022, are Journey, Toto, Tears for Fears, and Genesis.
Yeah.
That's kind of mind-blowing to me.
Crazy.
The biggest movie the last decade was Top Gun Maverick, which kind of saved the movie business.
Yeah.
The biggest shows on Netflix are Stranger Things, which is a complete 80s nod,
Right.
and Cobra Kai, the Karate Kid series.
Yeah.
So for the first time in history, we've got a whole generation who loves their parents' stuff,
Right.
music and movies. That's happened to a degree here and there over time,
Yeah, but not like
nothing
this.
like this.
Right.
Why do you think 80s nostalgia in particular? Do you have any theories on why that's so powerful, especially for a generation who didn't live through it?
That's a good question. I mean, it's probably a combination of things. If I'm sitting here really trying to think about it, I think there was something very endearing about the '80s that it was authentic. You know, on some level of. I mean, the music business is so different today than it was in the '80s.
Yeah.
Great musicians, great songs. That's a good combo. Infectious melodies. You know, I mean, you find these songs in movies now. You know, and going back, what was it about that? Even the the TV series that did all the, what was it called?
Stranger Things?
No, the one with the high school choir and the Glee.
Oh, Glee, yeah.
You know,
right.
and them going back and hitting all these songs.
Right.
It's like, man,
Forgot about that.
It lit up a whole generation, you know.
Yeah.
But I just think it was fun, and it was musical. I'm not sure a lot on the radio it was very musical.
Yeah.
More about vibe, or sometimes it's angst, and sometimes it's not music at all. Just
Right.
in my opinion. you
Yeah.
know. So, and I don't know. Maybe I'm saying this because I'm a piano player, but there's a lot of pianos and
Yeah,
synthesizers,
right.
you know.
Yeah,
And,
sure.
and the synth thing has kind of seemed to kind of come back,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
You know, I'm in the middle of this record. I mean, I'm writing 80s stuff. I didn't mean to write any 80s thing. I'm just writing these infectious 80s melodies, you know. So, that's just to mention a few things. I'm not sure that I'm right about that, but I think it's just probably a combination of things.
Yeah.
I'll give my age away. It's like my grandkids are sort of liking my '80s music that I'm writing. You know, it's like really, you know. And then they like Journey. Yeah, they like Toto. Yeah, you know, you do. Wow, that's amazing. Yeah. You know, and so what is it about that? I don't know. It's but I think of any decade, it's the throwback decade. You know, '70s were great. Yep, there's a lot of great funk and Earth, Wind and Fire and all that stuff. I love that. Yeah. And obviously it was Kansas was all that. But 80s, something happened. Amy, maybe this is a good answer. I'll never forget doing the Jesus documentary with Amy. Mm-hmm. And when we were doing it, obviously we were part of the 80s. Obviously we weren't Genesis or Tears for Fears, but we were creating all this crazy 80s music, you know. We didn't know it was 80s, it was 80s, but I just remember Amy and I, she says it on the documentary, she says, we were just having so much fun. Yeah. So I think there's just something about that music that brings people joy. Yeah. It's just, it's kind of worth celebrating. Yeah. You know. That's a great way to put it. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, to me, one of the things, it feels like there were no rules. There wasn't. Writing for, like you said earlier, for a particular formula, or we got to get this song on such and such. People weren't thinking it that way. Right. I don't think. I think they were just writing from the heart. Yeah. Writing great stuff that, like you said, melody. Yeah. You can hum it or sing it. I remember the last year that I toured with you, we played Mexico City. I think that was the last place. Walked into a hotel, 80s playlist. Right. I mean, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. And I don't think that we're going to hear 30 years from now, if you walk into a hotel, I don't think you're going to hear music from 2025 I don't think so. Playing in a hotel lobby. I don't think so. I believe truly, and maybe it's because it was my heyday, but I think it was the last decade of iconic generational stuff that really is going to leave a mark. Yeah. Jason Scheff, lead singer of Chicago, he put it this way. He said he feels like it's the last decade of music where that stuff's going to be studied and revered and honored along with the greatest composers and artists in history. Yeah. I believe that. I believe it, yeah. If you could go back and collaborate with any artist in the 80s, who would it be? Well, I have collaborated with one, which is Nick Kershaw. That was a joy. Probably Phil Collins. To be able to do something with him because he was Mr. Pop melody guy. Yeah. And would write all this infectious stuff. Yeah. And especially with the Genesis thing was like, it was sophisticated pop. A lot of it was just crazy changes. And, I probably was inspired writing Cross a Goal by a Genesis song, Yeah. Turn it on again. Yeah. And so I would probably say Phil Collins. Fun. Yeah. Love it. So a good song has the extraordinary ability to take us back to a very specific time and place in our lives. They become part of our stories. Are there any songs that do that for you? Not necessarily from the 80s, any song. Something that really takes you somewhere. Well, the first thing that comes to mind is, again, I go back to the joy part, and you were a big part of this, but we had so much fun. We worked together, 27 years, and one of the funnest things we did on every tour is we would create our 80s playlist in the bus and crank it up. Yeah. And we're doing everything from Everybody Wants to Rule the World to Rosanna, and you're playing air synth, and somebody's playing air guitar. Somewhere I got footage of that, and we got footage of it and put it in this. But just to be able to crank that up for 30, 45 minutes, and we all were like, we thought we were going to this bus is going to implode. Yeah. It was so fun. Yeah. And the joy was contagious, and you just couldn't deny it. Right. I think about those times. Yeah. We could have gone back and listened to anything. Sure. But we were listening to 80s music.
And it fed on itself. Like if somebody would play, we would almost start fighting over who gets the iPhone next.
Right.
But you would have, you would always land on Kershaw. I think for me it was Genesis or I can't remember. But always we would almost finish with Rosanna because like that was the golden moment.
That was the golden
because everybody
moment.
got a solo.
Right.
I mean, you had the synth solo and then the B3 thing and then a guitar solo. I mean, it was incredible.
So good.
Sometimes amazing things happen in writing or recording sessions. Do you have any stories from the 80s when you had a lightning strike or even a holy moment, for lack of a better phrase, where you knew you had something special?
You're probably referring to the 80s, though, probably.
I mean, ideally, but not necessarily.
I remember, I probably, more than anything, probably remember writing Secret Ambition.
Mm.
And of all places, I was at Amy Grant's house. And I think we were having every year we'd, let off fireworks and whatever to do the big firework night out there, and hoping that nobody would get hurt. It was crazy. but we were formulating songs for the Lead Me On record because it was all around that time, 88, 89. And I just remember, I think I'd probably written it and I was sort of fleshing it out, going, hey, I've got this crazy idea. And I remember playing that for Amy. And I remember goes, golly, I've never written anything like this in my life. I didn't know if it would win, but obviously when the lyric started to come about with Amy and Wayne, I knew we had something special. So I probably just remember that because it was the most unique thing I'd ever written.
Yeah.
And then just gosh, the moments being in the studio, like I remember I was with Brian Lennox and there was a bunch of guys in some studio here in Franklin, and I just wanted to just get together and jam. And I, on the fly, wrote, "I go wish a man."
Oh my gosh.
It's like, I went, whoa, what is this? And then so Bobby Blazier was playing drums, and we got in this whole, I said, Bobby, you got to play this. You got to play the shuffle thing.
Yeah.
Blazing a trail.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I wrote Go Wish a Man on the fly. Those kind of moments you don't forget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of my takeaways, or another one of my takeaways, we've talked about one or two already, from almost 3 decades traveling the world with you, was seeing the impact of a song on people's lives. You've had the profound experience of writing songs that have impacted, or in some cases, some people have said that those songs saved their lives. Yeah. That's heavy stuff. Can you share any of those stories that's been particularly meaningful? You kind of touched on the Place in This World one. I mean,
Place is probably, I think Place has probably more stories than probably most of all the other songs. I mean, Friends has been a mainstay. I mean, Friends has been at funerals and graduations, and I mean, great celebratory moments and very sad moments. You know, it's crazy. This song just becomes the fabric of people's lives. It just blows your mind, even to this day.
Yeah.
Friends is 42 years old. Almost 43 years old. But Place is probably the one. I mean, I still get people will come up and going, I'm alive because of that song.
Yeah.
And remember the girl who I vividly, in my memory, I just remember where I was when I got the letter and the whole thing about the girl who was, I think she was on the 5 freeway in Southern California. And I think she was on her way to take her own life. And she abuse, and it was just awful past. Yeah. And Place in This World was on Kiss FM on pop radio. And she pulled the car off on the side of the road and hadn't encountered God. And then she touched base with me years later, and she was alive and married and had 4 kids. And but she told me the whole story of how that song saved her life. Bro, that song's worth the whole career.
Yeah.
You know. And so, and you know, there's countless of others, and I don't dwell on that to pat myself on the back. It's just the power of music.
Yeah.
The power of a song that can change the course of somebody's life is mind-boggling to me.
Yeah. And to me, that's one of the things that sets you apart, people like you and Amy, you know, this whole thing about 80s stuff, as much as I love it, most of it isn't legacy material in that sense.
Yeah.
They're great songs, songs we all love, songs that take us places, but very few of them are message songs like that. Another one that comes to mind is Living Years, Mike and the
I
Mechanics.
was going to say that, Mike and the Mechanics.
I can't get through it.
Never forget. The first
Especially,
time I
you know,
heard
now I've got a daughter who's 21 about to get, you know, in that third verse about the father, you know. So that's a unique thing, you know. What are you listening to today that's really firing you up?
I have a hard time finding stuff. You know, I sort of, when I can't find anything other than Jacob Collier, which is sort of my new favorite artist because he's just a freak of nature. All the crazy changes, which I love that stuff. And that's probably who I've been listening to more than anything. But I just venture back to the 80s and 90s, you know. Like I listened to Thriller last month.
Oh, my gosh.
And because I've got a song on my record that sort of has a bit of a throwback Michael Jackson moment, and so working with Ted T going, we got to put our Quincy Jones hat on for this song, you know. So I went back to listen to Thriller to hear what that. It's probably a Lynn drum, probably, you know, but just how he programmed those drums, you know, and what they sound like and sonically and all that. But yeah, Thriller. You know, I still love going back and listening to Car Park North, you know, because it got the infectious pop melody thing going on, which is awesome.
It's a crime to me that more people don't know who they are.
I know.
I'll put a note in the liner or the description about them because, people need to hear their stuff. That's some of the best pop music I've ever heard.
It's just so good.
Bar none.
It's so good. And production-wise, it's great, you know.
It's insane.
Yeah, they haven't really found a slot for some reason, but
over here they're pretty big.
They're
in
big
Europe.
in Denmark. Yeah. So, I'm trying to think what's on my Spotify. You know, I'll make a playlist. You know, I like Sigrid, believe it or not, because I think she's unique, and she writes this infectious pop stuff. And really unique, because there's nobody who does that. Sort of little pop melodies sort of go, but it's infectious and it works. Yeah. And you find yourself singing it. You know? So I like her. I'm sure there's more things out there I'm listening to, but.
Well, that's a good segue to your project you're working on now.
Yep.
What can you tell us about it?
Ooh, it's crazy. I never saw it coming. You know, I think it started when it actually started 5 years ago when I wrote this Michael Jackson throwback. And it's very unusual for me to write something and not shake it, and all of a sudden 5 years later I can't shake it, and I have to put it on the record, because usually I feel like I'm writing better things. But I've never been able to shake that, and so I played that for Ted, and Ted was going, dude, that's awesome.
Is that the one that we did at Dark Horse a couple of years ago when we yes, yeah,
the crazy Genesis bridge, looking for the weekend, down in all the crowd.
I can't wait to hear what you do with that.
Yeah, you know, so Ted's created this whole, like, oh my gosh, this is Thriller. So it's got the whole Thriller vibe,
right?
You know, so, and I think that for some reason all of a sudden I'm in here, I start writing. When Ted comes into the picture, he's standing here, and I start writing stuff as he's standing here. He goes, bro, what was that? I go, I don't know. I just wrote it. and then Olsen's a part of the picture, Michael Olsen.
Oh, good.
And all of a sudden, I said, bro, you have anything? So he sends me this lyric, and all of a sudden, the lyric somehow magically, it's a miracle, sort of lines up with this new 80s thing that fell out of the sky. And so we finished it, and that's the first single coming out in 3 weeks. And so it's called Arms Around the Sun.
Oh, yeah.
It's a cool lyric. It's a cool.
He's gifted.
He is gifted, and it's like I've never heard a lyric crafted like that in terms of what it centers around. You know?
Yeah.
And so it's infectious, and Jonathan Rumi, who plays Jesus on The Chosen's playing drums on it, was kind of fun. I didn't even know he played drums. We become pretty good friends.
Yeah.
find out, I said, come on, play my drums. And then all of a sudden going, oh, dude, you're a drummer.
That's awesome.
So he's played drums his whole life. I never knew that.
That's
so he
great.
ended up playing on it, but whatever. So there's that. And then we just finished Kingdom Come, which is something that I've never done before. I don't think I've ever done it, but it's infectious. And I think it's a single. But there's a moment in the song that I modulate a step and a half up and not down. And it's a lift that I have a feeling it's going to be so much fun playing live.
Yeah.
So we're going to do it this spring on the tour. So
I might have to get my replacement knocked off and come back.
Out there. But there's that, and 3 songs with Olsen so far, and
awesome.
and I'm working with Brian Todd. We've got a little infectious. I'm running with you, which is, it's not. All the grandkids love it, so that's a good sign.
That is a good
it's
sign.
Crazy, they love it, but it's infectious.
Yeah.
It's sort of just infectious. So I think we got 7 or 8 songs. So we'll see. And we're doing this whole thing, which you've never done, Jim. It's like I've just always released a record, and so we're going to release a single. Then 3 months later, we're going to release another single.
Ah, okay.
And I've never wanted to do that.
Yeah.
It kind of seems what people are doing. I've sort of trusting my team.
Yeah.
That this might be the right thing to do, and then I think my gut says I think the record will come out in September.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. So you, my friend, are kind of an enigma. 67 years young. Is it 20 grandkids now? I can't keep up with it.
Number 20 on the way.
Okay. Working on killer pop music, touring the world, serving your community. People have often asked me if you're ever going to retire, and I just laugh. So what's the plan here? Is there anything is there anything that's ever going to slow you down?
Well, thankfully, I'm in good health. I'm just grateful for that. I might not be flipping and tripping at 85. But I feel good. And if you feel good, and it'd be different if everybody's stopped coming. It'd be different if, you're done.
Yeah.
And the great news, Jim, is that I don't have anything to prove. So to me, it's a calling.
Yeah.
And so this is what I'm called to do.
Yeah.
Why would I go do something else?
Right.
If it all ends, I will find something else to do. Hopefully I could be a music teacher. I could mentor kids, I've always said if I wasn't a recording artist or a writer, I'd probably hopefully be a very hip youth pastor. I'm getting a little old to be the hip youth pastor, but I think I would, like Rocketown, be involved. I think I would just be involved in going, how can I serve the community? How can I serve the poor?
Yeah.
I would do something, but why would I? Maybe I'm supposed to write songs for the rest of my life. John Williams is still writing at 92, 93?
92, I think. Yeah.
And he's still writing.
Yeah. Crazy.
So I think I'll write songs for the rest of my life. And as long as I can, I think I will just continue to venture out. I'm not sure that I'm going to do the world tour every 2 years, but I'm going to Argentina in the fall, which that's a whole miracle of itself. I'm going to Europe twice, But right now I'm just trying to finish this record. And that's really sort of my main thing that I've got to stay focused. And man, it's, this, Jim, it is slow. Oh my gosh. Because back then, I think if I've made some mistakes in the past, I rushed it. There was a deadline. I remember Brian Links and I would be up till 4 o'clock in the morning because the master had to be turned in by noon.
Yeah.
What are we doing? Why is there a deadline like that?
Right. That's always seems so arbitrary.
And deadlines can be good.
Yeah, sure.
And
it's a guideline.
Yeah, but so I'm trying to think where I was going with all that, but just I've sort of raised the bar, maybe higher than I ever have, because I know what I want.
Yeah.
And at my age, and I say this, I have no issue with my age. At my age, why would I forfeit? Why would I try to rush something?
Yeah.
So at my age, this thing has to be killer.
Yeah.
And if it takes 2 years, this record might not come out till 26.
Yeah.
If that's the case, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to rush.
Yeah.
And thankfully, I've got my own label. And
right.
I don't have a record company breathing down my neck.
Yeah.
I can do that.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So it's just trying to really protect this sort of moment that I've got, especially these next 5 weeks, that we've got to make some good progress. And I think we will.
Yeah.
But the first 2 songs took forever to get there. But I couldn't be happier with what's happened with the first 2 songs.
Good.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, I think we're rounding the bend here.
Come on, round the bend.
Is there anything? I'm just getting started. I'm not an interviewer.
You're doing good, Jim.
Is there
You're good at this. You got a future.
Well, thanks. Is there anything a decent interviewer should ask you that I've missed? Anything you want to talk about?
I always love when people ask me what's your greatest accomplishment.
So, Michael, what's your greatest accomplishment?
My greatest accomplishment is that I've survived success.
Preach on that a while.
Yeah, and I'm still married.
Yeah.
This beautiful woman. I've got this great family, and doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah.
So, but I think, to be doing it as long as I have, it's all a gift. But to be able to survive it, because most people don't survive it.
Yeah.
And it's just the prayers of the saints, bro. It's the prayers of, you and all my bandmates all through these years. My prayer group's been together for 35 years.
Yeah.
Don Finto mentoring me. He's almost 95. It's crazy.
He's 90. Good night.
Yeah, he'll be 95 this month, actually. And so it's just, that surviving success, and hopefully that can be an inspiration that people you can do it. You can survive success.
That's a book title right there.
I agree.
Is there anything else you would like to do in general that you haven't done? Something that would be
I think my only thing, obviously I think there's some movies and some things I want to do, and maybe this is probably not even attainable, but I've always wanted John Williams to orchestrate one of my songs, and I know he doesn't do that. Maybe he does, I could have a lot of mutual friends that know him, that know me, but I just think it would have to be the right thing, and I would just, all I could do is say no. Yeah. I remember I was talking to a friend who knows him, going, I don't think he'll do it. You can't say that. He might do it. I know John. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. But I feel like I would have to have something that I really, really, really love. Yeah. That hopefully when he hears it, he would really, really, really love going, I'd love to do this for you. And I'd probably pay whatever he wanted me to pay him. But I would just love to hear the John Williams touch.
Oh, my gosh. Can you imagine?
With one of my melodies. That would be a dream. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, okay. So in closing, I still pinch myself. It was, I forget how many years ago now, but it was 1995.
Oh, sorry.
No.
Oh,
well,
okay,
see, it was my catalyst moment was seeing you and Amy on the Lead Me On
That's
tour.
Right, Lead Me On tour. Yeah.
Stabler Arena, Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. I was 15, I think. And I just had never experienced anything like that. It was my first big show. Chris Taylor was running front of house, which is a big part of that formula. Yeah. And I just went home from that, thought that's what I'm supposed to do. I need to be involved in that. And it was 7 years later, when I think I was 22, moved to Nashville. 6 months later, I was working for you. And the crazy thing is, I remember, you've heard this, but my parents, they were so supportive. But all through my teen years, I'm going to move to Nashville and work with Michael W. Smith and Amy Grant, people like that. And they would chuckle. That's cute. You better learn how to deliver pizzas, all that kind of thing. And I know that's what I'm going to do.
Oh, I love it.
And I just think it was this goofy naivete, maybe, just that I felt like that's what I was supposed to do. Yeah. And
you did.
I did. But I couldn't have orchestrated any of it. Yeah. You know this. It was the same for you. And, I think, of all those lessons that I'm taking forward, hopefully with Arcade Orchestra, it's, like I said before, it's I want to impact the world with music that everybody loves. But it comes down to those personal relationships. Yeah. Looking for those people, looking for that janitor when we go into a city or a kid or what. I just think that's been something that people who know you know that, but it's pretty unsung. It's like the unsung hero thing. That to me is I've told people, wish I had $1 for every time I told people this, that people like you and Amy, you are where you are for a reason. And I've always looked up to that, and I think that's been as important as my musical education. And so that's what I want to leave people with. I think that of all these interviews we're going to get to do, it's going to be a blast. I can't wait to interview some of these people. But you and Amy have a special place, you know, and I think that there are a lot of reasons for that. So thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
Thank you for reminiscing a little bit and talking about some of this stuff. What other records you got sitting over there? Anything else you got?
Oh, God,
that you want to talk about?
Well,
oh dear,
we won't talk about that one. No, but
hey, tell me something about that before I forget. Well, I never knew this. Is the Argyle, is that supposed to be an MW?
You know what?
Or is that an accident?
It was an accident.
And somebody said that like 6 months ago. I'm like, oh my gosh.
And I still have that sweatshirt.
Of course you do.
These are great songs.
Yeah.
Going back to these are great songs. Obviously, Nick.
Yeah.
We're going up.
Yeah.
To the radio. Oh,
Mama.
There you go. Mama.
That might be my favorite track of the 80s. There's
that whole track.
Tony Banks' changes.
Those drums are just massive. So
Lindrum, you got a Lindrum sitting over there on a couch.
I got the Lindrum machine. Yes, I do.
Anything else? Any other?
I'm good.
All right.
Thank you, Jimbo.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate you. All right.
Yep. There you go.
That's a wrap. Hey guys, hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. It was quite a treat to interview my good friend of almost 30 years. Coming up next time, I get to do it again with another former employer. She is a legend. She's an icon. She started out basically defining a genre we know as CCM. She broke into the mainstream pop arena in the mid-'80s with her record Unguarded, and she proceeded to blaze a trail far into the future, still active today, touring the world, the one and only Amy Grant. Can't wait to see you next time. Thank you for watching, listening. Make sure to like and subscribe, all that good stuff, and we got a lot more in the pipeline for you. Take care. See you soon.